that can build other agents. And if you work with it correctly, it can have that reasoning capability because you're giving it specific tasks and managerial tasks and instructing it that if the agents that you create fall short of these parameters, then you are able to either fix them, eliminate them, replace them, and the agentic AI that you create will monitor.
The people have spent billions of dollars to train for 5 or 6 million. And again, this is questionable.
Yes,
There's lots of researchers coming out saying, well, they stole OpenAI's, data. They actually used 60,000 NVIDIA cards and not whatever they said they used. And there is a lot of due diligence that's being done on the science of whether or not DeepSeek is what they claim it is to be.
What the geopolitical status looks like. For example, there is going to inevitably be regulatory restrictions, but those are going to be implemented and enforced by various governments. And then you're going to have some governments that are a little bit more pro agentic AI implementation, and then others that are a little bit more restrictive. So the ones that are restrictive, if it's a superpower, they are not going to necessarily appreciate the ones that are a little bit lax, right? And loosen the chains or the belts and just let their companies go. China being one of them.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents. With us we have Steven Zeller, an investor at Innovative Technology Investments out of Miami, Florida. He's an AI entrepreneur, has lots of experience in health tech, marketing space, real estate, e-commerce, and I'll let Steven introduce himself and then we can kind of get started.
Excellent. Philippe, good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Should be a fun conversation, especially now at the time of this recording, with everything that's going on in agentic AI. As far as myself, just a quick version, serial entrepreneur since the age of 18 as a teenager, and now I consider myself a impact investor that's really forward-thinking, a futurist, really what is going to be the biggest impact on humanity to advance us into a prosperous future. Aside from that, I have a international consulting firm that I run out of Dubai. That's me in a nutshell.
Awesome, Steven. Yeah, lots of things going on in the AI space right now.
Yes.
With the launch of DeepSeek and people really rethinking what does it cost to operate AI, because it used to be really expensive. But now that that's out, so the price is going to go down. So maybe you can tell us about how it's impacting you so far and what you're doing and whatever you're building or investing in.
Sure, of course. So instead of speaking about implementation tactics on a granular level, I'd like our conversation, if it's good with you, to focus on maybe more of the bigger picture, the broader scope and scale, the incredible political and economic implications, how this rapidly advancing technology is changing the world from a fundamental level. And between you and me, and you can agree or disagree, I feel as though the general population doesn't necessarily grasp the significance of the imminent paradigm shift we are seeing happen right before our eyes as we speak. As of the date of this interview, January 30th, 2025, humanity is making a giant leap from generative AI, right, to agentic AI. And I think just explaining, a lot of your listeners are dialed in, right? A lot of your listeners are going to, they grasp the relevance, the significance, and they're looking for, okay, how can we implement and capitalize on this? But I think the ramifications of what's happening right now is going to be astronomically bigger than the vast majority of people really realize.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, they've just proven that you can train the model that people have spent billions of dollars to train for 5 or 6 million. And again, this is questionable.
Yes,
there's lots of researchers coming out saying, well, they stole OpenAI's, data. They actually used 60,000 NVIDIA cards and not whatever they said they used. And there is a lot of due diligence that's being done on the science of whether or not DeepSeek is what they claim it is to be, and a lot of AI researchers are coming out and saying, well, it's a psyop. But then again, these AI researchers get paid by Microsoft and OpenAI,
Of
so we have to
course.
take their thoughts with a. I would be saying
Grain
that
of
too.
salt.
Yeah, if OpenAI paid me, I would say, fuck DeepSeek, that thing is not going anywhere.
You have to analyze the source. Who is paying it? Where's the incentive? And if it's a truly unbiased analytical research that's being done. But you are correct. I mean, as of again this interview, January 30th, this last week has been insane with headlines. DeepSeek has obviously taken the vast majority of the headlines and the interest, and a lot of people are diving into it. Obviously, there are a few things that we do know for a fact. One of them is that China does have access to, we're talking tens of thousands of H100 chips that are not necessarily registered for geopolitical reasons. So there, as far as how you train it, now I do believe personally, just from my experience in AI data centers and large language models, how you train these agents, I do believe that they could have potentially utilized a portion of the open source code, right, as a initial template, but they did not just copy and paste OpenAI, right, or
Right.
ChatGPT. That's not how you train these large language models. So it is slightly different. I have a team that's actually analyzing, kind of doing side-by-side comparisons, because obviously the competitive nature of which companies are going to rise to the top in this new paradigm shift, the competition is only one factor, right? This is happening regardless. So I prefer to look, instead of really focusing on, okay, which agentic AI is slightly better in this way or that way, whether that's DeepSeek, whether that's Claude, Llama, ChatGPT, who owns the best, I prefer to look at it, okay, this is happening. This is an inevitable piece of how businesses, the economy, will operate for the foreseeable future. So what I choose to focus on is not who has the best, but what are the ramifications? What are the inevitable disruptions? Which industries are going to be turned on their head? Which jobs are going to become obsolete? Which opportunities are going to be created? Because I choose to really focus on where's the opportunity in this.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the whole point of us starting this podcast, was to explore these opportunities and people coming in from different walks of life and different industries and discussing, well, what are the applications of this tech in their space? How do you use this agentic technology in the culinary space, for example? Or because there are obvious applications like
Yes.
coding or like customer support. This has been done and overdone, and everybody has done it. Sales, everybody's building a robot sales person that calls everybody, and I haven't seen it like super successfully done yet, but everybody's been building
Me
them
neither.
since the beginning of time. Like, for as long as I've been in tech, they were promising us that robot salesman that will close deals for us.
Oh, of course. And I do believe that there will be a time that will occur.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Yes. To be honest, we've been making extremely giant leaps, not
Yes.
just year over year, but quarter over quarter. It's incredible the rapid way that we've been accelerating our learning capabilities to go from generative AI to agentic AI in the relatively short amount of time that we have, is an incredible feat. It blows and boggles my mind. Now, there are other obvious implications. Okay, so how do we make this better? The beautiful thing about agentic AI is the reasoning capabilities that are built in. So what I envision from maybe how we can structure this conversation is we can focus on what are the business ramifications of implementation, right? And then we can maybe discuss the potential economic of it. That could be job displacement, opportunities. What is it going to create versus what is it going to take away from the human workforce? That's something that a lot of people are looking at as well. From a business side, however, I see a couple different things. For opportunity-wise, I think in the near term, I do not think that this will be something where companies at scale will be replacing workers with agentic AIs, right? I believe it's going to be an augmentation to the workforce initially, right? And I also see, at least for the next maybe 2 to 4 years, I think there's going to be some new positions to be filled. For example, instead of HR, right, for human resources, you're going to have a new department created that could be AI management, AI relations, AI implementer and optimizer, but you're going to need a human to oversee the implementation, the optimization, and the constant work that's going to be necessary, just like you do with the human workforce.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the whole thing. And then you have to go into the area of compliance, right?
Yes.
So you have these people, they are supervising the AI. And what is the methodology of supervising this AI? So you're going to get some sort of AI version of Agile, where you're going to have these AI managers, and they'll have like a special way to manage those AIs to make sure that you're compliant, so that you are treating people's data accordingly, because now you are not working with the data directly. It goes into these large language models, and what happens there?
Correct. Security implications, compliance procedures, and then it's going to be fascinating to see what the geopolitical status looks like. For example, there is going to inevitably be regulatory restrictions, but those are going to be implemented and enforced by various governments. And then you're going to have some governments that are a little bit more pro agentic AI implementation, and then others that are a little bit more restrictive. So the ones that are restrictive, if it's a superpower, they are not going to necessarily appreciate the ones that are a little bit lax, right? And loosen the chains or the belts and just let their companies go. China being one of them. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be fascinating. That could be an entire topic right there, is the geopolitical ramifications and the regulatory restrictions that are inevitably coming.
Well, yeah, did you hear that Italy banned DeepSeek because it violated GDPR? They said, well, where is your GDPR certification?
And there's a lot of chatter, a lot of talk about will Trump and his administration enforce the same. I don't see it happening, personally, but it's a question, right? Because it's going to, the floor is going to propose it. There's a lot of proposals. I don't know if you saw this or not, but just recently I saw an article where, I haven't fact checked this at all. I just saw the article, of course, but where, who was it? One of the big tech giants, it might have been Oracle, it might have been Ellison, came out and said, especially as the workforce gets replaced theoretically by these AI agents, or certain job positions, what does it look like if we proposed a tax on AI agents? And then what would that look like? Because obviously that opens a whole nother can of worms, but if there were a tax, would that go towards, let's say, a universal fund where there was a basic universal income for the people that are getting their jobs replaced by AI, which is an inevitability at some point, even though I don't see it happening within the next 3 to 5 years. That's an interesting topic. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, think about it this way. They're saying, well, now that AIs are going to replace our jobs, we need to give people UBI, that universal basic income. I don't know how happy will people be getting UBI. I would say it's a bad.
I think it'll be mixed.
Yes, to get it. But in a sense, I guess people can still retain the services jobs of serving people, but a lot of this complex IT and engineering jobs are going away to AI. So what are we going to do with all these engineers that we train? So so let's say we tax the AI, or we put the tariffs on the AI, however you want to frame it, and then what? Where does that money go to? Like, what is the point?
Correct. And here's a bigger question, does there need to be, just like there's international law, there's NATO, there's all of these international groups, right, that collectively, collaboratively decide what should be allowed, what should be restricted, and then what's okay. So when you talk about implementing tax or regulations, those are usually granular and controlled by each individual government, right? That's not necessarily universal. That is completely controlled by the controlling member of that state. So now we get into something like this, where implementing a tax for UBI, if one country is doing it, okay, does that mean it's going to kind of spiral off and use one country as a guinea pig, right? Or do we see it working effectively over here and begin an international policy or group that's going to facilitate how this is actually rolled out?
So, look, I've seen some of the statistics on UBI. In my opinion, it doesn't work. At least they've tried it.
Personally,
Like they've tried it in Finland. I think they've tried it in Canada. One thing you're gonna see if you're gonna roll it out, you're gonna see creation of communes, and you're gonna have like people pulling their UBI funds together and having like shared accommodations and like communal living. That's one of the ways to kind of circumvent this little amount of money that gets given to you. But we're almost looking into how do we integrate people better with this agentic AI frameworks, and how do we create jobs around agentic AI and humans,
right?
so humans can still make a living while agentic AI does the work.
Correct. So more of instead of the doomsday scenario, an augmented acceleration of the economy.
Yeah.
I'm with that as well, as opposed to, I personally don't believe that going the UBI route is the way to go, for multiple reasons, and obviously we don't have time to discuss that today. That's just my personal opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I am in agreement with you that it is better to live in symbiotic harmony with robotics, with agentic AI. And that's one thing that I wanted to touch on as well. So allow me to go doomsday scenario for a moment, because there is an inevitability. They're happening simultaneously. You see robotics and AI at the same time. So agentic AI, the reasoning capabilities currently, that is all primarily virtual. But at the same time, you have all of these robotics companies that are utilizing generative AI, right? So specified tasks, right? You still require human intervention. They don't have reasoning capabilities as of yet, but those are, as of right now, they're
Right.
already being integrated into the workforce. You see BMW. They just they're working with Figure, I believe, is the robotics company. They're working with, they have humanoid robots working on specific tasks on the assembly lines for building their own cars in the factories. You have a lot of different companies that are now running these pilot programs. And when you start thinking about robotics that can be and will be mass produced and integrated into the workforce, combined with the currently virtual agentic reasoning capabilities, now you have a bigger doomsday potential scenario from an economic or workforce scenario. So if you're a business, if you're a company, right, and you have an existing limitation of payroll, right, you have a cap on your payroll,
Right.
and you can bypass that, right, as opposed to paying. So currently, you can use agentic AI, which very little upfront cost, very little management required, and you can replace X amount of your existing payroll. You would be stupid not to implement something like that from a business perspective. Right now, there's a lot of jobs that virtual AI cannot do. Now, when you implement robotics into the scene, coupled with agentic AI, and now you have a potential doomsday scenario where all of those jobs that we still required humans to do can be done by agentic AI coupled with robotics. So, humanoid robots at scale, they are coming. Agentic AI is here, so you have to start thinking about what the next 5 years looks like. I think the conversation needs to be bigger, it needs to be louder, and we need to start coming up with solutions of what does a symbiotic harmony with humans and agentic humanoid robots look like.
Right. And as we start to approach AGI, and they start to,
We already have AGI, in my
I
opinion.
mean, we
Well,
have,
so I guess the only way that I would say the only thing that makes me say that comment, right, is, I mean, there's multiple tests, there's multiple ways, but AGI being here is based on O3, scoring a 87% on the ARC test, which 85% is comparable to human level reasoning intelligence. So that was O3, right? And that was a single
right.
test. In my opinion, I think you need to go a lot more comprehensive, but I believe AGI is already here. It just may not necessarily be readily available by the general population.
Oh, look, I think AGI, what it implies is that once we reach it, we can start to approach singularity, and that's where these things can out innovate humans, and we essentially become unnecessary in the scope of innovation because they will just move innovation forward by leaps and bounds. From that perspective, AGI is not here. So while O3 is capable of analyzing, like of solving like a math equation at a level comparable to a PhD student, it is still not capable of, let's say, innovation as such. It doesn't innovate anything. It
Sure.
solves. So you can train these models to be really good at solving those math equations and doing those tests. That's what they excel at. The only way that these models become powerful is when they can actually perform real world tasks without failing 1 billion times. And that's, for example,
Correct.
not what OpenAI excels at currently. Like if you tell it to do coding, it will, but it will suck at it. It will do it somewhat better than it did last year, but it's still not like at the level where you can just let it run wild and it will do it for you. It
The
is better.
reasoning and error, yes, the error correction has to be there, and reasoning
Yes.
capabilities. Now, humans make mistakes too, right?
Right.
So I think it's okay for an AI model to make a mistake.
Right.
That said, you are correct. At this point where we are right now, it doesn't have the reasoning capabilities to ascertain when it makes a mistake and then comes up with a solution to fix that coding error. That is, I agree with you, what I believe is coming. And I believe that what is currently here is a very early iteration of that technology.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is with DeepSeek, what you can do is you can actually build a agent that can build other agents. And if you work with it correctly, it can have that reasoning capability because you're giving it specific tasks and managerial tasks and instructing it that if the agents that you create fall short of these parameters, then you are able to either fix them, eliminate them, replace them, and the agentic AI that you create will monitor and optimize all of those separate agents for you autonomously without human intervention. Now, currently, I do stress that you need some human, not necessarily intervention, but monitoring to make sure that this is happening. Otherwise, you just have an agent that's running wild and not actually generating the results that you anticipated or desired.
Yeah, and look, like people have been playing with OpenAI, that web thing where you can just set it to go do a task, and it would go and it would perform some sort of a task for like hours on end, and you would leave it and it would still be doing it. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's doing it, right? And I guess to
Right.
your point is that that's really, really cool, and you can have the AI agent that spawns like continuous action and continuously iterates and improves on it without you needing to be there. So that's sort of an AGI. It's a bit clumsy, but it is that I agree that it is there, and those capabilities are there. I think what it is missing is sort of a desire to innovate on its own, so it needs a human to prompt engineer it. But wouldn't it be cool if it could just say, well, the world really needs this, and it really sucks that we don't have this? Then it would go and it would come up with the problem, build agents to solve the problem, and solve that would be AGI. And when AI starts, that will be probably as AGI as it can get.
That is definitely one example or one definition of. I believe what we have right now is a rudimentary version of what you just described. That said, will we ever arrive at I believe to achieve what you just referenced would, in my opinion, require some version of consciousness. And again, that just launches us into a whole nother topic of conversation right there, is what is it to be conscious, because we are still trying to figure that out ourselves. That, and obviously I'm very, very much integrated into the world of human longevity, potential immortality, anti-aging. The things that we're doing from a longevity perspective are absolutely incredible. The genetic engineering. I think that what we have right now with AI is we're going to see leaps and bounds in the synthesis of proteins, for example. OpenAI, I'm not sure if you saw this, OpenAI partnered with a company that, I'm trying to remember the name, I just blanked on the name. It will come to me as I sleep or as soon as we finish this conversation.
That's I always do thoughts like
but
that.
It's something biosciences.
Retro bioscience.
Retro. So that's take a look at that, because I think that is significant. They obviously Google has had their system that actually AlphaFold. I'm not sure if you played around with that. AlphaFold is very cool. What it can do with giving you the patterns of actual individual proteins, which are fantastic. What Retro and OpenAI are planning to do in conjunction with each other in this collaboration is kind of take that a step further and understand, okay, so here's what we want the protein to do, right? And then it can develop a synthetic protein that accomplishes the specific task. So I think that's going to be incredible, especially when you talk about therapeutic applications, when you talk about longevity, when you talk about genetic alterations or editing. It's going to be fascinating what AI is able to accomplish just for us as humans, just in the next 3 to 5 years, as long as the regulatory agencies don't come in and restrict the hell out of it.
Wow! So they're gonna really be able to basically improve how basically the protein design happens, and then they'll be able to treat diseases much faster. Okay. That's why they're building that Oracle lab, right? I think Ellison was talking at the press conference saying they're going to cure cancer and everything like that with generative AI. And that's why they're putting in $500 million into those data centers. And, they're saying, oh, well, DeepSeek did a great job at copying OpenAI. It's great and it's cheap. But guess what? Now this $500 billion data center is going to be able to do just that much more, right?
Exactly. We're going to see a competitive landscape, and that's what I referenced earlier. I'm not really. There's a lot of hype around. Do we eliminate DeepSeek? Because here's the thing on that. Just quickly is everyone's up in arms because DeepSeek monitors your activities. They monitor your keystrokes. Every AI does this. That's how they get better. That's how they learn. That's what they're trained to do. So regardless of where it's going, that's going to be up to you, I think, as an individual, which company you want to have all of that data. If you feel more comfortable sending it to an American company versus a Chinese company, that's completely up to you. But as far as that goes, I'm not really up in arms over something that is kind of a duh scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. Like in the end of the day, they were complaining that it had censorship, but so did like Gemini, so did
They all
OpenAI.
do.
They just have different biases towards the countries they're based in, and it's
Of
just
course.
cultural biases. And I think every country doesn't like when people talk bad about it, so they will
Well,
always try to install their own biases.
of course. And I don't necessarily think it's intentional. It could be intentional, especially when you talk about an authoritarian regime like China. Is it intentional censorship? Potentially. However, think about how you're training your LLM. What content are you feeding it? If you feed, so for example, if the LLM model is trained in the US on primarily US based content, the vast majority of what it is picking up and learning is going to be of the political viewpoints of that nation. The exact same thing in China. They
Right.
are going to primarily be consuming content based from China. It's going to have mostly Chinese um, viewpoints, religious beliefs, things like that. So when you ask a question to these different language models, you will get a different response. I don't necessarily see that as censorship. It is a potential. However, it's not necessarily the case just because of how these large language models have been trained.
Right. And we did see a bunch of researchers break DeepSeek and basically
Yeah.
jailbreak it, and it was able to start saying all those bad things that you're not allowed to say in China. So again, it comes down to prompt engineering and just telling it not to. Like, remember when Claude used to be really good, and then they hired the DEI department, and then it said, "Well, I'm
That
now
was so
gonna
long
help."
ago. I don't recall that.
And then you started to see all those Reddit posts. Well, Claude is now bad. It doesn't help me do anything. And now it just gives you bullet points of crappy answers. It went from like the most amazing LLM to like just it now gives you like crappy answers. Like ChatGPT is better, Grok is better. All right, Steven. Well, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it, and it was great to have you on the podcast.